Hey guys, welcome back to Money Mondays, where we talk about time, money, and resources, and how as a business owner, you can stay lean and stay smart with how you invest your money in marketing and in many other ways as well. I'm your host, Taylor Gaines. I'm super excited to welcome my guest, Corey Benjamin. He's the CEO of Quicksilver Studios. They're a large creative shop in town that works with a lot of B2B companies, and they do amazing work. And what I love about Corey and Quicksilver is, like me, they're very focused on solving business challenges and looking at creative solutions on how to use marketing to do so. So I want to welcome my guest, Corey. I'm super excited that you're here. Why don't you start with a little bit more about who you are, your background, and a little more about what you guys do?
Yeah, Taylor, great to be here. Thanks for having me on. Obviously, my calendar was a little empty, so I appreciate you helping me to fill it up. Quicksilver Studios. Yeah, what we do, what we've done for over 40 years is provide creative strategy and design services to Fortune 500 companies. Primarily, we work with them on their sales pursuit efforts, so re-engaging current clients, finding new clients. We also do things around internal communication as well as thought leadership. And then we have a sort of a burgeoning arm that touches on things relative to what we call immersive media. And so that would be things that are, AR, VR, sort of data-led platforms, things that we can add, certain metric-driven decision-making around.
Awesome. Well, I'm super excited to start digging in a lot of different ways because we've obviously had amazing conversations and a lot of fun. Brainstorming around, emerging technologies, especially in marketing and the AR, VR type of stuff and talking about like virtual trade shows and innovations. So I want to start diving in a little deeper around that. So like, what are some technologies that you're super excited about that you feel have been very underutilized by a lot of B2B companies that you're finding a lot of companies who've been maybe historically closed off to innovation are now thinking like, oh, we need to innovate, we need new solutions, we need to think a little outside of the box. What are some technologies that you're really excited about right now?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's obviously an important one as we look to, get smarter on how we spend our time. I don't mean this to be a cop-out, but one of the new technologies is actually one of the oldest technologies that I found our team to have some success with, and that's really the telephone. That's having genuine conversations with folks, that's connecting with them on a level that doesn't have a lot of layers. Hold on one second. Good job, buddy. Thank you. Paper cut earlier today, so it's all.
I'm like, and we're back.
Yeah, right. Scene. Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
Okay.
All right, so, and beyond the phone, there are a lot of things that can be used in conjunction to make something more effective. I think we were trending in a way where we were starting to see really the separation between the human-to-human interaction that a lot of buyers and a lot of folks just genuinely crave now. We were getting closer to AI-led chatbots, automated messaging. Efficiency was really what was driving most of the marketplace on spend before. Now I think you're going to see people really pine for, not just having a phone number to call or an email address to submit a support ticket. They're going to want to have a person with a real name on the other side and have that engagement. And so beyond the phone, beyond looking for authenticity, things that travel. That's, I think, going to be one of the main keys coming out of this environment we're in is what can translate. So there's a lot of interesting things being done with AR jumping from being vanity into being utility, being portable. The costs are coming way down, and I don't think it's people just gutting their margin. I think it's genuinely the technology taking a step forward in tandem with some of the desire for different things that can be done with within the virtual space, whether it's at home, whether it's at work, whether it's a trade show.
Absolutely. So what are maybe some of your favorite campaigns you're seeing companies do right now and how they're using some of these technologies to communicate either key message points right now or key solutions or evolve rapidly? Because it's been a sudden shift. So what are maybe some like innovative things you've seen or cool campaigns you've seen that you're like, ooh, that caught my eye?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I think it's hard to escape the B2C answer on that, because B2B, I think, largely has been frozen in place, which is a normal reaction. I mean, if you look at how most people process things, and companies are no different. Really, initially there was a freeze, and then there's, you assess, what are our options moving forward, and then you react. And so I think B2B has really reacted more defensively. We've seen budgets freeze. You've seen, some folks get furloughed, unfortunately. And so there's not really a lot that inspires you by way of the marketing you're seeing coming out of B2B. There's sort of this blanket message of, soft music with, imagery of people being isolated, or, people spending, time within their home together. A lot of, pictures of families on couches, that kind of thing. But I think, some of the more admirable ones are the ones that do point out the sort of breadth of what's being done that's positive right now. I think, we're all sort of sick of hearing that during these unprecedented times comment. We're all aware, we're literally, the entire planet is within that moment. So let's think about something else, and not in a way that drags us, out of being able to be actionable, but in a way that inspires us. And so some of the campaigns, even that you're seeing now, Amazon is doing some spends for the Red Cross. I think that's a really smart move on their part from a company perspective, but it also is something that reminds you that these kind of faceless monoliths, they care. At their core, they're people driven. And so whether it's you buying a product, or whether, them supporting something else, I think, people will begin to engage more. I'm losing my train of thought because of what's going on in the background again here. My apologies. I'll wrap up that question here.
I feel like this is just the new normal, so it's like, yeah, okay.
Right. No, I'm trying my hardest. Honestly, I am. It's just the world. This is actually a pretty good allegory, because the message gets easily lost, as well as the train of thought. And if that's happening for somebody who, I've actually took time to prepare for this question, but nonetheless, the world has gotten in the way. I think that's what anybody who's out there marketing right now should keep in mind. What do you have by way of anchor points that you can pass along to your intended audience, whether it's through something that is organic, meaning a one-to-one communication with your client, or whether that's something that's meant to be a message for the masses. Make sure that you're, leaving them with something that, can sort of persevere through some of the disruption.
Absolutely. I think that's a perfect segue into, the next question I wanted to talk about, which was, how do you foresee marketing departments are going to change as a result of this? And just in general, like, what do you think are going to be the biggest shifts that either marketers need to pay attention to, or leadership needs to pay attention to, once we're quote unquote back to normal, which, we know is not going to be normal really, but like, however we want to define that word, once we're back.
Totally. Yeah. Right. Yeah. The back to normal, the return, sort of, phrasing, when we return, when we get back, I think it's a comfort statement. It's really allowing us to pretend like there will be aspects of life that are untouched. And at our core, I think we all know that that's not really true, but that's also not necessarily all doom and gloom. Anytime there's a change, there's opportunity. And opportunity does have risk, but it also does have, potential for growth. And so one of the things that I've stuck in my head when I heard years back, Jason Fried say this with Basecamp, he said that adopting the Basecamp style, which is where many of us are, I mean, essentially we are all, operating as that team does. And his concept was, don't hire the person who's the best person for the job within 100 miles of your location. Hire the best person for the job, period. And so his team is international. They do everything online. Obviously, they use their own products. But I think you'll see more of that. I think you'll see more of people embracing the idea that remote teams can carry a culture. Remote teams can still be effective, and it's not just going to be a fad. Some other things, I think, being able to consider where budget goes. So, how you're allocating your dollars of in-person spend with trade shows and with events versus maybe social media spend or content. I think people will place more of an emphasis on things that are, and we talked about this back in the early 2000s, even how the internet was run then, things that were sticky. A sticky list of 100 people that respond to every email and open it is much more valuable than that 100,000 person list where you get a 1% open rate. I think we've forgotten a bit of that. I think we've gotten sort of lost in metrics for metrics' sake. And I think that we'll get back to the stickiness.
Yeah, I definitely agree there, because I think there's an element of, people have kind of been chasing the dopamine effect. Every like you get, you're like, ooh, like little bit of dopamine. You're like, yeah, I got a like.
Yeah, right.
And I'm like, yeah, but how does that relate to revenue? Like, what does that actually do? And I'm in agreement there, where it's like, the 100 people who are sticky are far better than the 1,000 people who aren't. I think because we're seeing a lot with the whole burning of celebrity culture right now, through this pandemic, I think, or I'm hoping people will start to realize that, and like, how do we be more strategic with what we have, and looking at the tools in the toolkit a bit more objectively versus like writing off certain tools because they might not understand it. So yeah, I really hope that's a positive change.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you say that, because it something dawned on me over the weekend, and that's to look at who's essential and who's not essential. So essential would be the grocery store clerk at this point. However, Brad Pitt is considered non-essential, or, your other A-list actor. Little cameo from my son. But I think that carries on.
I'd say he's essential.
He's essential, right. And by the way, teachers, very, very essential. I think that we've all forgotten how valuable teachers and the structured school system is. But no, I wonder if celebrity does become a relative term, if we do start to, is it a feel good that we're, applauding truckers and healthcare workers, or is it something that will, realign our value network on, who we choose to put campaigns around, whose story we choose to tell? Is it going to be that celebrity that's pitching your product in your ads, or your influencer, promoting, or is it going to be something that's more of an authentic story?
Absolutely. Getting on a little bit of a side tangent here. Have you seen the Burger King campaign where they're giving people free Whoppers if they can solve math equations?
No.
I'll have to send it to you. But I thought it was brilliant when I saw it. I was like, oh, this is perfect. So they're like, we're trying to help you stay on top of your math homework and stay in school. And so they're pushing out like really complex math equations. And I'm looking at it and I'm like, ooh, this feels like my trigonometry days. And I'm like, oof, I don't remember any of that. I'm like, what was that sine over cosine thing that has nothing to do with my life anymore?
Right. Yeah, 83, right. Yeah. The calculator with too many buttons and shift gears, and But no, it reminded me of there was a help wanted ad that Google put up on a billboard years and years ago, and it was a math problem. And if you solve the math problem, is actually the help wanted ad for computer engineers. And I thought that was one of the more clever things that I've ever heard, by way of like a brand really eating their kibble in all aspects of what they do.
Yeah, I love that though, because if you think about it, like that might feel very kind of B2C, but it's really a B2B play for hiring departments. And, I think a lot of corporations need to be a little more creative. And I think this is kind of an interesting time, since we're kind of getting back to humanity a bit, of, just being able to see like what kind of creativity will they bring to life to help humanize their brand a bit more, or come up with the solution. So I'm excited to see what might happen, after this. That's a really interesting thought, because, we've heard this from certain politicians of, through no fault of their own kind of, commentary. We were humming along as a global economy in many aspects. We're humming along even more so as a national economy in different sectors of the economy. And, if you've been on LinkedIn, even for 5 minutes, you've seen somebody, bemoan the fact they've had to possibly furlough people, or they've had to make, cuts to their budgets, that kind of thing. And you wonder how much of that becomes whole again. And then if it does become whole again, does it become whole in a way that's approached similarly? In other words, do the campaigns get picked up right where they left off? Whether it's from a spend perspective, the projects that are based around that campaign, the anticipated results, what does success look like, coming out of, I guess getting into some sense of what the new normal looks like. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I think, segueing off of that, in your opinion, like how would you advise like marketing teams or companies to be better prepared for, let's say, the next doomsday? And I think we can all at this point expect that there's going to be some kind of round two with this, because it is novel. And there's been a lot of correlations to the Spanish flu and what happened. I think it was like 1918 when that happened. And so, like, what would be your advice for how companies can better prepare for, you know, the next time this, well, hopefully it's not that as bad, but, you know, we know is, you know, history somehow repeats itself. So it's just a matter of time. But how would you advise companies to prepare for the next one?
Yeah, I believe that it may not be a pandemic next time. It might be an earthquake. It might be a really bad recession. There's always going to be something that takes us out, you know, takes the wind out of us and takes us off of our, you know, best laid plans. To prepare for that, and I think, you know, some groups have gotten it right from the word go, and that's to battle test your team. That's to, you know, do some stress testing. Make sure that, you know, not that you can just all work remotely on a quick basis and over a period of time, but that you understand what the goal is in doing that. You understand how that affects your company culture. You understand how that affects your budgeting, because, you know, freezing up your budgets, it's not necessarily a way to keep moving forward. In fact, there's been, you know, a lot of positive response around people who are starting to change the narrative around their outreach to, you know, driving us into, you know, the beginning of coming back, instead of, you know, trying to comfort us in the moment that we're in. So one would be battle testing your team. Another would be having a continuity plan in place. You know, many startups are sort of bemoaned for the fact that they want to run so fast and, you know, fail quickly, that, you know, they haven't put the pieces together to make sure that, you know, they can maintain in the face of nearly anything that's thrown their way. The same thing is true for corporations, but, you know, they usually do have much more diligence. In fact, somebody's usually bestowed with that role at a corporation and meant to be the shepherd of the diligence file and the diligence plan. You can do that at any level. You can do that as an independent contractor. You can do that as a Fortune 500. Prepare, you know, take some time and just look at the landscape. You know, you brought up a great point. Be a student. Be a student of history, yes. And there's a lot of things that parallel between 1918 Spanish flu and what we're dealing with today, but also be a student of what you see going on that's right. Learn from what you see that's going on that's wrong. Understand that taking notes and constantly updating your...
Hope your audio cut out just at the end. Oh no, it's cut out. Nope, I lost you. Oh no. Oh, did someone go mute? Let me see if I can unmute it. Try now. Nope. Oh no. Something's on mute. Oh, wait. You were here and then you weren't here. Wondering if it's Wi-Fi.
All right, how about now?
Is this me? Oh, yep, I can hear you now.
All right. Yeah, no. So, you know, being a student of not just, you know, what history has to teach us, but what other companies can teach us, and constantly updating your continuity plan, constantly, you know, putting that what if in the back of your head, because it will happen. Something will happen that takes you away from, you know, the idea that you had on how things are supposed to go, and what you do about it in advance will make it that much easier for what you're going to do about it in the moment.
Absolutely. I like what you said about battle testing. It reminds me of the earthquake drills we used to do in school in California, or the fire drills that I think is more of a globalized standard. And I'm like, I think it'd be funny to see like a work from home drill, and you just see like car marching in, like, we're having a planned work from home day, guys. Like, make sure you're ready.
Right.
That will be kind of funny to see. All right. So I want to finish it up with some so 3 takeaways. So considering we're talking about time, money, and resources, the 3 takeaways I want to cover real quick. So time. Where should marketing teams be spending their time right now?
Yeah, I think I've never seen a closer moment for sales and marketing to be unified than right now. I know a lot of, you know, lay people will see them as one and the same. We all know, working in those industries, that they're very different. They have different goals, different measurements, different budgets, you know, et cetera. But right now, I think they're sort of fused together, for better or for worse. So I think, you know, I would say focus on a niche. You know, focus on your clients and focus on a niche with your time. So if you know that you're in the sort of the underlying message to all this is survive and thrive. I've heard a couple of people say it now. It's something I think makes a lot of sense. Just get through this moment. And you do that by doubling down on the people who've trusted you thus far. The 80-20 model, however you want to put it, familiarize yourself with it. It's with going back to the clients that you have and learning how you can truly be a resource for them. Be authentic. Pick up the phone. Have a conversation where you don't sell something to them. Get to know their perspective on things, and you'll find that it's going to pay in several different ways down the road. So that's how I would spend my time, is identifying my true core niche, not necessarily the little things that I'm going to do just to try to survive, but what are the things that I really know I do well and I can execute on with a high level of competence. For money, I think I would focus on shifting budgets to where you can reach people. So social, for me, would be key. It'd be key because there is a lot of built-in authenticity to the social strategy, as well as content that matters, content that moves the conversation forward, that somebody can take something away from and feel better for it and educated. You and I talked about in previous conversations that this, shelter in place, whatever you want to say, it feels like one long day. And if you can give people something that they felt like they learned or something that felt momentum on, then I think that's going to be a net win. And the last part you'd asked about, so it was time and money, and what was the third part again?
So the third one is resources. So what resources should teams be paying attention to or tapping into now, considering that I think a lot of people are operating very lean. As you mentioned earlier, like a lot of B2B companies are on the defensive, so they're cutting budgets. What would your advice be on how to be very strategic with resource allocation, or even if they do have a little bit of budget to spend, like what resources would you advise them to be investing in today?
Yeah, resource allocation, I think I would take a two-pronged approach. One, I would understand that there's a lot of very talented people that have been furloughed or were independent contractors to start with. Lean on that level of competence and understanding. They'd love to have the money, whether it's something you're just going to bring somebody on as a consultant just to ask their perspective from a very educated, angle, or whether you want to maybe augment your own team. And be mindful of your own team. You mentioned the word resources. That sort of implies that our core team is, of course, they're a resource. Who else beyond that? But I think being human and letting your team know that, hey, guys, if you need a day off, take a day off. And then if you really have something flare up on the client side, you can pull somebody in that, you've already vetted, somebody who has a similar skill set, somebody who maybe is an expert within, that particular client scenario. Beyond that sort of resource preparation and execution, I'd say talk to other teams. Don't be afraid to talk to other people that are in your niche. Understand what struggles that they might be having that you can fill in on, or vice versa. We've done that with folks in the event space in the past, and we're even having these conversations right now with people that used to be primarily trade show event groups. How are they iterating? What thoughts do they have? You don't have to think through this entire thing on your own. And you can do that by way of, message groups there's threads on Reddit, there's groups within LinkedIn, there's the phone, there's, the conversation like what you and I are having right now. That's really how I would look at it, is that it's a community affected environment. And so lean on each other in order to try to create some sense of stability and normalcy.
I love it. Well, thank you, Corey, so much for your time. This has been an amazing conversation. Really appreciate your insights, and I hope my audience will too.
Yeah, one quick thing I'd say, there's two people besides you that I would really strongly suggest people dig more into and get as much content in their ear and in front of their eyes as they can. Obviously, you're putting a lot of great stuff out there, and I've really learned a lot from even what you've been doing over the last couple of weeks, both on the social side with trying to just organize people for letting off some steam, but also trying to educate people. Another person I'd say is Tony Leonard with a company called Sales Empowerment Group. He has a great newsletter he puts out once a month that is very angled on how to get the sales environment to be something that's you're more aligned with. And he's done a good job of over the months and years of making sure he's giving you contemporary content. Another would be Jason Swank with the Smart Agency podcast. Now, I know some of your, the folks who are going to be watching this are not necessarily in the the agency world, but there's a lot of takeaways that you can still apply to what it is that you're doing, whether that's conversations about how to approach a client about a certain thing, how to manage your team, how to manage your mindset when pursuing new business and pursuing marketing campaigns, that kind of thing. So that's it. That's the free recommendations and the shout outs to some folks that I found to be very helpful for me. And again, thank you for having me on today. It's been great.